Welcome to The Rest is Giant Robots, a conversation through the careers of writer Simon Furman and artist Andrew Wildman. Recollections and revelations about the highs and the lows as creatives in comics, books, games, film and TV.
Welcome to The Rest is Giant Robots, episode 48. I'm Simon Furman.
And I'm Andrew Wildman.
For a moment, I thought you were going to forget to introduce yourself.
As if I'd ever do that. Go on then, tell everybody what we're going to talk about here, Simon, because I've not...
Hello everyone. We're going to do a movie one this time, but we're speaking before we came on air for this segment of the podcast, that we've kind of done something like this before. Back in episode 7, we spoke about some of the influential movies from the 70s and 80s that impacted on us. But we're going to do... I gave Andrew a task, which was to pick 5 movies that made him, if you like. So it's the movies that made us, and these are movies that we sort of grew up with, that obviously stayed with us and in some way or other sort of impacted on the way we wanted to write or draw or tell stories.
Yeah, and obviously as creative people, that's what fed into a lot of, the way that we do things, the way that we respond to things, and the way that certainly the way that you'd have come up with ideas. Visually, it would have inspired me, but I'm just purely from a narrative point of view, that must have been huge for you.
Oh, yeah. And I was a voracious cinema goer as a kid, to the point where my dad thought I was just plain weird. He was probably right. But, my dad thought it was very unhealthy that I would spend so much time in the cinema. And often, if I couldn't get people to go with me, I would just go on my own, because I devoured the sort of film magazines of the time, like Photoplay, and I think there was one that was just film review, whatever year. Okay. And so I used to plot out my cinema going. And when I was younger, of course, that ruled out all the X certificates, which was very frustrating. Yeah. But sort of up to double A's, the old classification system, I could just about see everything, and I almost did, really. I was not discerning. It was just like, okay, Shout at the Devil, an adaptation of a Wilbur Smith book. I'm going to see that.
Yeah.
Gold with Roger Moore, sort of some really dire films, really, when you analyse them today. Actually, Shout at the Devil's not bad, but Gold was not wonderful. But this was right off the back of Roger Moore being in Live and Let Die, which just blown me away. So I'll go and see anything with Roger Moore in it.
Yeah.
So
interesting that he made, like, having been signed up as Bond, that he then did something else. Whether it was shot before Bond or not, I don't know. But
I don't know. I mean, Live and Let Die was 73, I think. Could be wrong, but thereafter he definitely was in quite a lot of films. None of them superb. Like I say, there was Gold, there was Shout at the Devil, there was one called was he in The Wild Geese, some kind of war one?
Oh yeah.
Anyway, he was in a lot of films, but I suppose he was just an old school actor who, a bit like Michael Caine, who could multitask. I don't think Bond was the be all and end all, and I'm not sure he would have known that he would be in 7 Bond films even.
No, probably would have been better if he hadn't.
Well, yes. I mean, he wasn't a young man when he was in the first Bond, so, by A View to a Kill, it was kind of showing that there's I love the bit in, I think it's For Your Eyes Only. He has a car is driving up a hill, and he runs up a load of steps inside this sort of mountainside thing. But no matter how many stunt doubles they got, he still looks out of breath by the time he got to the top. Yeah, it wasn't really sort of selling it anymore. But I love them. He was always my James Bond. So
Oh, really? Oh, that's really interesting. No, it wasn't. Kind of wasn't mine at all. I can't. I mean, Live and Let Die. Yeah, fantastic. I have. I mean, I saw all the others, but I have no memory of which scene was from what. They just all mushed into one for me. Live and Let Die is absolutely distinct as, yes, a film that I saw. I remember it well. I really loved it. And after that, I don't know, it just all seemed to just fall apart.
yeah, I know them so well, those Bond films, and of course I did see Diamonds Are Forever at the cinema, but
Yeah.
it kind of didn't impact on me because I also don't think it's one of the best Bonds by any stretch. And then ultimately I saw all the Connery ones again, and then I sort of thought, oh wow, yeah, okay, these are
Mm,
really good.
mm. Yeah, they
But
had those.
it's like,
Doctor No was on the TV the other day,
mm,
and I hadn't noticed it was on, and then I did notice kind of on the TV app, and there was another. There was only like 15 minutes left of it. I thought I've got to watch it, and I mean, I was surprised how old it was, um,
yes.
but how good it was, and it's like that was the template, it
Mm.
was great.
But you notice that Doctor No, from Doctor No from Russia with Love, all the sort of Bond mainstays come in from Russia with Love
Yeah,
rather than Doctor No. It was like all the bits started to assemble after that first one because it could have been a one-off
yeah,
easily.
yeah.
They didn't pick the first Bond book; they picked one that they thought was cinematic or whatever, and so it could easily have been a one-off if it had flopped.
So what was the first book? Was it Casino Royale?
It was, yes.
Mm. Yeah, which is interesting there. So that's why, probably because it's been made twice. I mean, so they started with that with the Craig era, didn't they? But there was the old David Niven Casino
Oh
Royale.
yeah, which is such a mess, a glorious mess in some ways, but you know, it's like one of those films from the '60s that doesn't really hold up today, just because it's a bit like films like What's New Pussycat and things like that, and it was just like groovy '60s films that don't kind of hang together now.
No, no. I mean, as a result of groovy '60s films, that's why eventually we ended up with the wow, Christ, what's the guy that did this like the spoof Bond things? The guy
Oh,
from
the
Wayne's World,
though Austin Powers,
Austin
Mike
Powers.
Myers. Yeah, but I was thinking of even in the '60s, you had the Flint films in like Flint and Our Man Flint, which were
Yeah,
kind of the American James Bond versions, and they're great fun.
yeah, and that was James Coburn, was it?
James Coburn, yep. And I remember the Dean Martin, Matt Helm films as well, which were really good. The Wrecking Crew, I think, was one. See, there was
Okay.
probably a link there to the Wreckers or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's many films, but none of those are on my list of five, of course.
Yeah. Okay, so what's
So
your? Are you going to go in date order or when you saw
I'm going
them?
to slightly go date order here. So I'm going to start with my 1940s film, which is The Big Sleep, which is,
Okay.
and it's funny, back on that episode 7, I mentioned the Robert Mitchum Farewell, My Lovely, which had
Mm,
been a big sort of film I'd loved watching at the time. But it was when I saw the original Big Sleep on TV,
yeah.
never saw it at the cinema, sadly. It's just, I mean, obviously it's an adaptation of the Raymond Chandler Private Eye novel, the Philip
Mm,
Marlowe one, and it's still one of those films I default to if I just want to watch a wonderful bit of cinema.
mm,
It's incredibly well done, and the book, it's very faithful to the book, and the
mm,
book slightly makes no sense. The ending, it's one of those ones where when you sort of run it through in your head, it's like, well, hang on a second, that doesn't quite marry up story wise. But the film is wonderful, and obviously it's got Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall,
Mm.
and it's just one of those ones where the stars are amazing in it. He's the most amazing Philip Marlowe that the screen's ever seen. She is great
Yeah.
as Sternwood, and there's just so much brilliant chemistry between the two leads, and just watching them bounce off each other with some great dialogue and all that mood that and it wouldn't have worked in color. That's interesting that the later ones, when they were in color, the Robert Mitchum ones, they lost something for being in color.
Yeah.
The essence of the Private Eye movie that so sort of inspired me was the black and white, the Maltese Falcon, the Big Sleep. Those really sort of perfect to me. Oh, you've disappeared on one of your cameras.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this one off. Sorry, I'll edit that bit out.
Yeah. Oh,
I think it's just going to get some bleed. Sorry.
yeah. Okay, no worries. So that's my first film, and chronologically it comes first, but I don't think I saw it first. I think I saw many other films before I finally saw that, and saw it and appreciated it as well. I may well have seen it, and a lot of it went over my head. But when you sort of see the film with modern eyes, you realise what a sort of brilliant bit of filmmaking, scripting, acting it is. I mean, it's real screen presence sort of shot through it. And yeah, it's one I will always go back to, and I realise made such a big impact on me in terms of the stuff I really want to. I mean, I ended up writing a lot of giant robots, which is all well and good, but I would have, in another life, I would have tried my hand at writing sort of prose, Private Eye, Pulp Fiction, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember the first time I knew that you were a big fan of kind of noir, Pulp Fiction, all that kind of thing was one of the Transformers UK covers where Nightbeat was on it. You wanted Nightbeat in the raincoat and the hat kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which didn't work very well because of his shoulder things, but that's when you explained to me you wanted it to look like a kind of a noir thing, and I thought, oh, okay, and I got that then, which obviously then feeds through to your own stuff that you've done more recently, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that story that you did the cover for and did the interiors for, wasn't it? It was called The Big Shutdown,
right?
which has come to be sort of Transformers slang, if you like, for death. The Big Sleep is obviously death, and The Big Shutdown was just our version of that. So you can see that was literally me channeling my love of that movie into and probably some of I haven't read it in a while, but probably some of his little internal monologue is lifted straight from The Big Sleep.
Yeah, very good.
So anyway, that's my first. Your chronological first?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go. Should I go? Yeah, okay, let's go chronological.
It's up to you.
So I'm more than 5, but I'm kind of narrowing them down because I'm kind of compacting a couple together. So the oldest one, which I have mentioned before, so I won't spend too much time on it, is 1946, A Matter of Life and Death, David Niven.
Okay. Yep.
And I remember watching it on the TV. I must have been very young, and I was completely struck by a couple of different things. One was the contrast in the vivid colours of all the colour scenes, and obviously then the kind of monotone of the black and white scenes. So a character that essentially dies and is going to heaven. So all the kind of heaven scenes are all in black and white, and then all the kind of earthbound scenes are in color. But the color was really vivid because it was a Powell and Pressburger film. So Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, filmmakers who, for some reason, just managed to get these wonderfully kind of vivid, almost emerald-like colors in their movies. I don't know whether Jack Cardiff did all this cinematography for them, but he certainly did that one. I briefly met Jack Cardiff actually many years ago when Leslie, my wife, got her MA from the Royal College, and they were given their MA in the ceremony at the Albert Hall, and there were some other kind of honorary honours being given out. So also on the stage with Leslie and the other graduates from the Royal College were James Dyson and Jack Cardiff. So it was just like, wow, who knew these were going to turn up? But there you go. But I really love A Matter of Life and Death. And in terms of its narrative, which was the thing that captured me at a very young age, was, and people will know this of me now, was that very kind of existentialist kind of drama and narrative, about life and death and the meaning of life. And it's called A Matter of Life and Death. And I think there's a very kind of, I don't know, significant child with an artistic temperament. I don't know. I was all a bit introspective. That was kind of getting a grip on me. So that was one that always stood out for me. And then seeing it again, in more recent times, not because when you're young, you don't necessarily know why you like something. It just has an impact on you, but you don't have the language to be able to describe it or the knowledge to understand what are the things in it that make it that impactful.
Yeah.
But then watching it in more recent times, now that I work in film and TV, it's like, I get it. I get why, it's the kind of thing that would really, oh God, my phone's going there.
Another bit to edit out.
Go away, I'll just leave that. Yeah, sort of working in film and TV, I understand what it was that really appealed to me about it. And it is just the composition of the frames and the way that the narrative plays out, and then just that all that content about life and death. Not really much more to say on that one, other than it is, as a lot of Powell and Pressburger films, not all films, but they are highly regarded as significant pieces of movie making, and A Matter of Life and Death is arguably their best film, and also the favourite film of Jamie Payne, who's a director that I've worked with on many things, including Luther. That was a huge coincidence when we both found out that our favourite ever film was the same one. Useful.
Also with that film, a bit like with Metropolis, which I'd never saw at the time, but then, the old 1920s robot movie, basically, but Metropolis, I could just go wow and look at the set design and the invention behind it and the cinematography. And it's the same with A Matter of Life and Death for me. The sort of the vision, whoever, came up with those visuals and those scenes and setting and the sets, brilliant. And it's one of those ones I could admire, as well as a good story, on a very technical level.
Yeah, and the escalator, I think that as children, I can remember, because I saw it with my brother as well, I suppose, and we just thought that was fascinating, with this almost like endless escalator going up to heaven, and the little kind of repeating musical motif that played while they were going up there. It was just like the little tune that just plays in your head just afterwards so much.
No, I mean it really is a great movie. I mean, I've seen it many times, and it's sort of switched from the early scenes to the later scenes. It's such a great transition. And I'm sure lots of filmmakers have used that that sort of stylistic kind of big switch
Yeah.
to sort of really amp up the sort of the difference between the real world stuff and the heaven stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I guess was kind of the Wizard of Oz was very much they used
Yes.
that large, didn't they? The black and white and the color and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and I used it in Horizon. There you go, in my
There you
graphic
go.
novel Horizon.
See, these things they filter down. So
They
okay,
do.
my second one
Yeah.
is The Jungle Book.
Okay.
Now this I did see as a very young sort of kid. I don't know when, but it was that age where you could go to Saturday morning pictures and things and see, because the Jungle Book came out before I was old enough to go to the cinema. I mean, I think it was early 60s, I'm going to say. And so I must have seen it on some kind of re-showing.
Yeah.
I loved it then as a kid, and I can still appreciate it as an adult. Some Disney films haven't worn as well for me in that transition from child to adult. But
Yeah.
Jungle Book completely holds up, and it's a really good narrative. And the reason why I'm kind of singling it out is it was my first time where I thought this is a compelling and almost challenging narrative. And at the end, there are decisions made that, does he stay with the animals? Does Mowgli stay with the animals? Does he go
Yeah.
back to the humans? And there are definitely pluses and minuses on both sides of this. And it felt like, oh, they're having to make hard choices here. And it really impacted on me, given that it was just a kind of fun cartoon with talking, dancing, singing animals. It,
Yeah.
it was it had a real sort of substance to the storyline to it. And obviously it's based on a Rudyard Kipling short story. So
Mm.
it had some good pedigree, as like a lot of the Disney films did. But it wasn't a fairy tale as such. It wasn't Cinderella or Snow White. It had a sort of edge of real world about it. It was incredibly scary. The Shere Khan battle with Baloo at the end. I remember
Mm.
being deeply traumatized when you think Baloo's dead after it, and it's such a well shot scene. There's the it's lightning and thunder, so you've got it's flickering almost into black and white during their battle, sort of
Yeah.
illuminated. The vultures are sitting watching this it's just there's so much about it that I love, and even as an adult kind of just appreciate more. Some great killer songs in it as well, and set pieces. But
Yeah.
what a brilliantly constructed story, and I think it was just really foundational for me that you can tell such an involving, quite deep story, but have it aimed for a kid audience. And I'm
Yeah.
sure it influenced how I wrote Transformers. I didn't want to write Disney Transformers. I wanted to write Jungle Book Transformers, if you like.
Jungle Book Transformers.
There you
Yeah.
go, you see. I just wanted it to have that impact that it had on me, to the point where, like I say, it semi-traumatized me, that sort of final battle. Shere Khan, and brilliant. And it's voiced by George Sanders, who does it
Yeah.
in this wonderfully urbane menace. And there's just a scene where he's with the snake Car, and he's basically threatening Car, and he just flicks one claw up and tickles the snake under the chin with it. And it's such a threatening, even though he's sort of semi-smiling. And there's so many bits from that film that I sort of paid attention to and sunk in and came out later in some way or whatever. So yeah, that was a formative one for me, and still, I could watch it any time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember seeing it. I just looked at it. It was 1967,
Oh
and
right, so
it was one of those. It was that Disney period, like from a visual point of view. It's the Disney period where actually, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was after that they changed the way that they animated. I think it was
Yeah.
Robin Hood, wasn't it, where they did
Yes.
them from drawings and they didn't trace. They just did the so you can see all the pencil lines. No, Jungle
Yeah.
Book was fantastic. Yes, and he did have very very memorable songs. Um, that obviously, I mean, I can't remember whether I saw it at the cinema or not. I've got a feeling I did, but
It could
even
be.
yeah, but because back then, when a film came out in cinema, it was a good 5 years before it would be on TV. Usually,
Mm,
before it would be released, rights would be released, and so that would kind of date it quite later. So probably did see it at the cinema, but even so, the songs were just played all over the place. I mean, the
yeah.
Bare Necessities song. I mean, it was on the radio all the time. It's
Mm,
so there would have people would have seen a lot of it. There was no social media or anything, but even back then, we would have seen all the clips on TV and heard the songs. So
yeah. I mean, I might even have seen it at the cinema first run if it was 67, because I would have
mm,
been 6 and, old enough to see it, but still young enough to be, like I say, slightly traumatized by it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, very powerful, and that's Disney at its best was very much that. I mean,
Mm,
you only got to go back to well, even Bambi was heart wrenching,
yeah.
and Pinocchio's got some really quite dark stuff in it.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard lots of creators talk about Bambi as, I think Tom DeFalco used to say that was a movie that had very, highly adult content in it for a kids'
Yeah,
film. There was death,
yeah,
and when Bambi's mum dies, it's like, oh, what?
yeah.
That's not
Plot
supposed to
spoiler:
happen.
when Bambi's mum
Yeah,
dies.
yes, yes, yeah. Damn. Yeah, edit that bit out.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
you're
no,
next.
they were very powerful films. Yeah, good choice, Jungle Book. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Um, which to pick next? I don't know. If I'm going by date, there's I'm gonna go for okay. So just a little bit of kind of run up to this next movie. So when I was very very young, like you, I used to watch a lot of films on TV and absolutely loved them. Old black and white movies, fantastic. And there were two movies that I remembered seeing as a child that I remembered very very specific scenes of, but I couldn't remember what the movie was. I never knowingly saw it again on TV, and it haunted me for years and years and years. One of them I found out what it was, and it was I can't remember the title, but it was Gregory Peck was in it, and it was a kind of psychological thriller, very very much like a Hitchcock film. It wasn't Hitchcock, but it was
Mm,
kind of like a Hitchcock film. Gregory Peck, very very good. So I kind of bumped into that one. It was shown again at some point, and I watched it and thought, oh, that's that movie. But there was one that I remembered seeing. I remember it being black and white, but that's probably because TV was black and white back then anyway, and we didn't have a color TV. So, but I remember it being kind of very thriller noir, and I remember two clear scenes. One where a car with a couple sitting in the front, man driving, woman passenger, and a guy sitting in the back at night, raining, pull up to a house in the middle of nowhere. They and they're looking for shelter, I think, because there's a storm coming. And they go up to this house and they knock on the door and there's nobody there. And the guy who was sitting in the back, who's like the main character, um, he suddenly realizes that he remembers that there's a key to the front door in a flower pot by the front door. So he finds the key and they let themselves in. But he can't remember why he knew there was a key there. And then there's another scene where I remembered this like room which was just like mirrors surrounded, almost like there's 8 mirrors, whatever, in this room, and he's in a room, and there's another guy in there, and my memory was that somebody, I don't know which one it was, stabs the other one with a corkscrew or a small knife or something, and that's all I could remember. But those scenes haunted me for years, I could never find what the film was. I mentioned it to so many people, you know, that were avid film watchers. They didn't know what it was. Um, Eventually, with the advent of the internet, I started to look on kind of film news groups. Couldn't find it on there. Um, I sent in requests to some of these places and never got a reply. And then probably about 10, 15 years ago, I found another kind of sort of news group website thing on the internet, fans of thrillers and, you know, old movies and film noir and all that kind of thing. And I wrote into that saying, if anybody knows what this is, and I described the scenes, and that was it. And it was probably only about 3 or 4 years ago I got an email from somebody who'd seen me, you know, who'd looked back through the threads, was interested in that, and had seen my kind of request saying, "Does anybody know this film?" And he emailed me, and he knew what the film was, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" Because I thought I was literally going to be on my deathbed and never having known what this film was. And it was a film that it turned out there were two makes of by the same director, one in 1947, and then the same director remade it in 1956. And the film in 1947, the first version of it, was called Fear in the Night.
Okay, yep.
And the main character was played by DeForest Kelley, who was Bones in Star Trek.
Yep.
And it's on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. So this guy who wrote to me said, yeah, there were two versions, blah, blah, blah. I don't know which one was the one that you saw.
Yeah.
So I went on to YouTube and I watched it and definitely got those scenes in, but I wasn't sure if it was the one that I had seen. So I looked at some clips. You can find it on the internet, not on YouTube, on the internet. The second version, 1956, which I think it was just called Nightmare, but it's the same story, same director, and the main character in that was Kevin McCarthy, best known for Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
And I think it was that version I saw because it had just like his way of acting. I kind of remember, and they're not great films, but that it haunted me so much that I think that was the beginning of my fascination with psychological thrillers, which I've loved to this day, you know, through then into the master of all of that, which is Hitchcock. Love all those films. But so yeah, look them up. Fear in the Night and Nightmare, these two incredible films. And the relief of finally finding out what these films were was just enormous, you know.
Yeah.
But those scenes that I remembered are still kind of fascinating. They are not great movies, but you know, very much of their time.
I mean, I had the same kind of thing slightly. You know, I'm going to talk about horror movies next, and you know, I remember seeing a film. I could never remember what it was, but a guy kind of he's in a road accident or something, and he keeps waking up in this hospital minus more and more limbs.
Oh.
And you know, and it stuck terribly with me, and I couldn't remember what it was. And it's one of those Amicus films I found out called Scream and Scream Again, which I've seen since. but at the time, it was such a terrifying image. But yeah, you know, I digress. It's funny, you do have those ones that it's just a scene or two that stick.
Yeah, and they just haunt you, don't they? Especially if you'd seen them when you're very young and very impressionable, and just you know, they're never shown again.
Yeah,
I had the same thing with. I think I've mentioned this before, just briefly. That similar kind of thing as a memory of an episode of Star Trek, which I vividly remembered. And every time they ran Star Trek on TV, I would watch and never saw that episode again. And I eventually found out why when I found it in a video shop, and it was released as 2 episodes on a video, and they were ones that were only ever shown once, and then they were banned. They were removed from viewing because they were inappropriate for whatever reason. And the joy of that was knowing that. So I watched the Star Trek the very first time it was ever broadcast on TV. So it's like
Mm,
I thought I probably had, but that kind of confirmed it because it was only screened once.
right.
It was an episode called Miri.
Yes. Yeah. I think I saw it subsequently, never at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Star Trek
And
did have some sort of contentious episodes, didn't it? It had the first
yeah,
interracial kiss on American TV, and they had a
yeah,
few that I think there's one whom the gods would destroy or something, which maybe it's that one. But anyway, it really is. Yeah, it had some good sort of themes that other series didn't explore.
yeah, very definitely. There's one called The Apple as well. I think that one was. I think that was the other one on this video, The Apple and Miri, which is the one where they land on a planet and they think it's deserted, and then they find out that the only people there are children. There are no adults,
Yes, yeah.
and there's like a disease that has killed the adults. And then Kirk gets a bit of this disease on his hand, and Uhura's got some on her thigh, which she lifts up her dress and shows this diseased
uh,
thigh. But,
yes.
yeah,
The
fantastic
the
stuff.
things that stick, eh? Right. Okay. I'm going to jump on into my third because
Yeah,
we're already looking like we're not going to get through 10 films here. So my third is a kind of slightly offbeat choice, but I
mm.
graduated almost straight from Disney to Hammer films. So that was it. I was
An
watching
easy
Disney.
job.
Yes, I was watching Disney films, and then I was sneaking down at night to watch Hammer horror films with the volume turned down so low, so I could
Yeah.
just sort of watch their original Draculas and Frankenstein films and others.
Mm.
But the film I'm picking from the Hammer sort of catalogue is a film called
Yeah.
Vampire Circus, which was a
Oh
70s
yes.
one when things had got a lot more lurid and sort of you know sort of sort of full on, I guess, in Hammer, and they were sort of increasingly throwing elements in. But I loved it, and I still love it for the fact that it's so over the top.
Mm.
It's a vampire movie. It's got a Dracula-like character in it, but it's got so much else going on in it. It's very bloody, very sort of Hammer version of sexy, and it was just like, wow, what a film. And it's still to this day, I think they just threw everything but the kitchen sink into this film. But it also made
Yeah.
me think that this is what horror films can be. You don't have to be completely formulaic. Let's have it that they're vampires in a circus, and there's a snake woman, there's a strong man, there's they put everything in, and then just threw more stuff at it, and I love
Mm.
that. Even though it's probably they're not the best Hammer films, it to me that was the one that stayed with me. Vampire Circus.
Yeah.
It just really is good, and it still bears a watch, I think, today, just because they they literally threw everything at it. And there was a Dracula film around that same time called The Scars of Dracula, which again isn't one of the best in the series, but I loved it because it was sort of it was really over the top. They were really, I think Hammer as a company were pushing. They didn't last much longer. They were gone by the mid-70s,
Right.
and I think you can see them it's like put more and more excess in, and flesh and blood and but I love it. I love it for all that, even though it's not the best of the bunch.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember when I was probably a teenager, early teens. Yeah, it would have been early teens, I guess, like 13, maybe 14. Um, they used to do a double bill on a Saturday night. So they'd have
Mm.
like a Hammer film first, followed by a Universal film. So you would get all of those kind of cheesy Hammer films, and then after that, one of the classics, from Universal, Frankenstein and Wolfman and all that
Yeah.
kind of thing. But yeah, I remember Vampire Circus was another one of those films that I remembered seeing it on TV and thinking, "Oh my God!" As a teenager, what the hell am I watching? And I thought, surely my memories of it are not what it actually was. So I have looked it up on the internet since, and it very much as I remembered it. The snake woman or whatever she
Yes.
was the standout, where she was literally body painted, not
Mm.
wearing a stitch, just completely body painted. And I remember
Yeah.
what stuck out for me as a teenager was I remember I think there was a fight scene and she did a cartwheel. And it was like, okay.
Yes. Yeah. That probably is somewhere in my memory as well. But
Yeah, burned into memory.
yes.
That's,
Okay. So we're running out of time here, but
oh, wait.
you do your next one, and
Okay, I'll
we'll
see if I can get through. I can get through this quite quickly. I was gonna mention a Bond film. It was interesting that you said about Bond earlier on. And I was thinking Bond is so significant. I mean, I was an avid watcher of Bond films. The first one I saw in the cinema was Diamonds Are Forever.
Mhm.
Um, but I've got and then I saw reruns of all of them in one of the local cinemas in Bedford. So I saw them all on the big screen, all the Connery ones. I really liked On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I think
Mm.
that was, I think, my favourite Bond film. Probably still is my favourite Bond film. So I was going to pick that, but I thought no, because I need to get Hitchcock in, and and so I was thinking about what Hitchcock films do I like. Well, I love them all, but the one that kind of stands out for me because it was the template for Bond is North by Northwest,
Mhm.
1959, where it has that kind of very Hitchcock thing, and also the kind of thing I like, not just psychological thriller, but kind of existential. Um, so Mr. Thornhill is his name. I can't remember the guy that Cary Grant plays.
Mm.
Is he's trying to find somebody that seemingly doesn't exist, and that's kind of the whole premise up until, and he's been mistaken for that person, and
Yeah.
he's been hunted and hunted down by the James Mason villain and his henchmen, because they think he is that person. So it kind of twists and turns, and you're purely there with this kind of accidental hero finding his way through the movie with this very kind of Bond-esque ending where Cary Grant goes to the villain's lair where James Mason is, and it
Mm.
all kind of plays out that way. But it was a very beautiful styling, very kind of mid-century styling. The house that James Mason is living in looks like a classic piece of what the hell's the architect's name? Can't remember. Anyway, um, of architecture of the period, but it doesn't actually exist. I looked it up, thinking, where did they shoot that? But
Mm.
it's not a real house at
Okay.
all. But there is that. But the standout scene from the whole movie is that crop dusting aeroplane scene where
Yes.
Cary Grant is at the kind of crossroads in the middle of nowhere, and it's so Hitchcock. It's beautifully held, like wide shots, no music, really, really still, with this building of threat, which very few directors can get away with doing that. They seem to need to want music to inform you to what you're feeling. They
Mm.
seem to need to have music to signal, what's going to come, and to build the pace until things start to happen. And it's all very, very overblown and spoon fed. But Hitchcock just leaves you hanging, leaves you hanging, leaves you hanging, and then just the subtlest things in the background that just play out until they become a massive threat.
Yeah,
It's a classic piece of cinema.
it is. Yeah, I mean, my sort of go-to Hitchcock is Rear Window, because
Yeah,
I think what a clever premise for a start, and that's not necessarily Hitchcock, but it's how he maintains the tension of what is effectively one room
yeah,
across a movie. And you know, it's uncomfortable anyway because he's being quite voyeuristic, the sort of Ray Milland character. But it's the sort of the way he ramps up the tension, and the way he sort of, it's all across a quadrangle of a building complex, but
mm,
it's just, it's a masterclass in how to make a lot of a little, if you like.
mm. It's like a play, isn't it?
Yes.
Very much
It's,
feels like a play.
yeah.
Yeah, very good
Right.
time.
So we're kind of coming up to time here. Do we carry on or do we save for another podcast?
I've only got one that I would mention really.
Okay. Yep. Well, then let's carry on. So
Carry on.
the
You go.
the last one I'm going to mention is Dirty Harry,
Okay.
the the first of the Harry Callahan films. Again, a directorial tour de force, I think, in how to make a movie and
Mm.
how to make a unlikable character likable, which I think is always a very clever trick. We're rewatching The Sopranos at the moment,
Oh yeah.
and Tony Soprano. There's nothing to like about that character, but you root for him.
Yeah.
Harry Callahan in the Dirty Harry films, you know, appalling on so many levels, but it's like you put him. It's that sort of lesson in storytelling of how to take an unlikable character and just make sure that everyone else around him is unlikable also for heightened reasons. So,
Yeah.
the killer in Dirty Harry is this snickering, twisted psychopath who just shoots people at random from rooftops.
Yeah.
And the mayor is this loathsome, character obsessed only with how he will look, and then just generally it's like he is the only kind of voice of sanity in this. And
Mm.
there's a whole dialogue in one scene where the the chief or the mayor is berating him for some previous incident, and the the whole thing is, he's shot and killed somebody, and
Mm.
it's like, and he says, look, I see a madman, a naked madman chasing a woman with a butcher's knife in his hand, and I shoot the bastard,
Yeah.
and I just think, oh, you see, and it was almost a reaction to, this is the kind of, there's too much of what is now. It's all sort of politicizes, and he cuts through all that. And I love the sort of the film. It's brilliantly shot, Don Siegel, and basically, it still is a very, very tense, short, sharp bit of filmmaking.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of a. It's almost a bit like Batman as a setup, isn't it? So you've got the anti-hero and you've got the commissioner kind of mayor character, and then just psychotic villains. So it's very Batman, and kind of a precursor to Dread as well.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know,
Yeah. Very
see a
much.
villain, he's a perp, just shoot him.
Yeah.
There's
That's
no
yeah.
messing about.
No, and you're right. I mean, I wonder whether it was an influence on Wagner and Grant and Pat Mills, of course, when they created Dread. So, but it's a great film, and it came out of that American new wave of cinema and directors that I've spoken about before, of that in
Yeah,
that 70s period, where it was like, we're stepping outside the rules that say a good guy's got to be a good guy and all that. It's Harry Callahan has, you know many things that you could dislike about him, but in this mad world, he's the sane person, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, the 70s was an incredibly interesting time for filmmaking that felt a bit maverick at the time to a lot of people, but very much led to where we are now in many ways with filmmaking stylistically. I mean, you know, the French Connection, films like that, and the directors Scorsese and all those people who came at a time where they were young enough and brave enough, and people were willing to take a risk where they would do things that would change the way movies were made. And there was also that technology that came out in the 70s, which hadn't been available before, where they could shoot more effectively at night.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd always in it, you know, prior to that, they'd had to shoot what they call shoot night for day, or day for night, day for night. So where you would shoot at the daytime and you just use blue filters over the lenses or grading afterwards to make it look like night, which you see in a lot of old horror films. But the 70s changed everything. Really did.
And you know, Dirty Harry and its sequels are interesting because they almost introduce the concept of a kind of catchphrase. So you know, it's do you feel lucky, punk, and then in one of the sequels it's make my day, and that sort of template got moved on to so many subsequent films. In that action genre. Anyway, sorry, your last one.
My last one. Okay, so here's something completely different to all of that. so still in that slight kind of Bond thread. So it's not a Hitchcock film that was the template for Bond, but has so many things about it which are so paralleled with Bond, and the film is Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Wow. Okay.
So,
which was written by Ian Fleming.
Was written by Ian Fleming. So screenplay by Roald Dahl. So that kind of made it a bit more kid friendly. But what I find fascinating about Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was, so I loved it as a child. I saw it in the cinema. It came out in 1968, and I remember going to the amazing cinema that we had in Bedford while I was growing up, which was knocked down and turned into a car park, probably in the early 80s or whatever. But it was a huge screen at the Bedford Cinema. It was called the Granada. It was one of the massive widescreens, of which there were very few outside London. So seeing films and it was there was the main stalls, and then there was the circle, you know, balcony, everything. It was a huge cinema. So you really got the impact of a cinema that needed that kind of space of which there were many. But Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was very much one of those. It was so wide in its scope. But the interesting thing, sort of latterly, that I realised about Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is that the narrative kind of format is very much like a Bond film. So you know, you get like, and it's very much a hero's journey, I guess, but it is like a Bond film. You get the call to action, and so you go off to defeat the villain. The villain lives in some crazy villain's lair. The villain in the movie is played by the guy that played Goldfinger.
Right, yeah, I'd forgotten that.
There are gadgets in it. I mean, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is like a car with all these kind of gadgets, and it can fly and everything. So that's incredibly Bond as well. So all of Ian Fleming's narrative templates were definitely coming out in the story. So it's like a Bond movie for kids. So Karateka's Potts is basically James Bond, and there's a Bond girl. So Sally Ann Howes, who plays a girl, is essentially a Bond girl. But unfortunately, he has to take some kids along with him, so they have to keep it kind of child friendly. But in amongst it being a child friendly kids film, you've got bizarre side villain characters like the child catcher, which is so wrong. and like in terms of catchphrases, you know, the child catcher with these kind of lollipops, you know, enticing children into this cage. It's just so dark. It's got Benny Hill in it, which is hilarious.
I know I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in a long time. I think I might have to rewatch it because I think it's one I saw when I was a kid and not much since.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's got, and in terms of music, it's got some great songs. It's not a musical, but there are musical moments in it. I mean, Lullaby Mountain, the song, the lullaby that he sings to his kids, is cited by many as one of the most moving and beautiful songs ever in a movie. And there are plenty of other musics and songs, to enjoy in there. There's Dick Van Dyke doing what Dick Van Dyke does.
Yeah,
Basically, the only other film we know him from was Mary Poppins, so
yeah.
they had to kind of get a bit of that into it. So there's him doing, dancing and all that kind of stuff, dancing with a bamboo cane and all those kind of things. It's got everything. The other
Yeah.
the other thing in terms of the locations, apart from this totally made up place which is called Vulgaria, I think, which is where the Baron lives, who's the kind of Goldfinger character. But there's the cottage in the windmill where Caractacus Potts lives
Mm.
with grandfather, played by Lionel Jeffries, which after the film was made, in not all that long after that, it was bought by Hayley Mills, and she lived there for many, many years and restored the windmill and
Mm.
restored the cottage, and then did a lot of kind of conversions to it. But she lived there for many, many years. The If you look on the internet, there's no way you can find out who lives there now. Very, very private residence with a very, very secure and secretive. I know who lives there, but nobody else does.
Okay.
Um, the but the other interesting thing about it is the car. And I thought, well, I wonder who owns the car. And a lot of people thought that Chris Evans, the guy that used to do the DJ, not
Yeah.
not Captain America, Chris Evans, the British
Yes. Yeah.
DJ and TV presenter Chris Evans, bought Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but he actually had a perfect replica of it, which he sold for like £500,000 apparently, a number of years ago. But interestingly, the original Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is now owned by Peter Jackson, of all people, director of the Lord of the Rings films and classic horror director,
Mm.
who was clearly a fan of the film as well. So I think it's touched many people's hearts, certainly
Yeah.
touched mine. And I think if there's one film that in my local cinema here that I'm a founder member of, because I can have a free screening there, and I've never taken that up, I think the one that I would choose would be Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Wow. Yeah. Not Vampire Circus, anyway.
Well, I don't think they'd probably.
Anyway, right. Look, we better wrap things up. We've gone a little over time, but
That's all right.
we can talk for England. And yes, just a reminder. It would actually. Did we tell? I'm not sure we told our general viewers, listeners, who's going to be on our 50th in a couple of podcast time.
Did we only announce that to our Prime
I,
members?
I
And by
think
the
we
way,
did.
if anybody wants to become a Prime member, so they do have prior notice of stuff that's happening, additional content, and to have the podcast as a video, all they have to do is to go to wildfur.net and sign up. You get a free
Absolutely.
month's membership, and then after that, you can enjoy all this stuff. But anyway,
Yeah,
Simon, yes, you were saying.
you get a heads up on stuff like our guests on our 50th podcast will be none other than Nick Roach, artist
Yay.
extraordinaire on Last Stand of the Wreckers, and
What's his name?
James Roberts. You idiot.
I never remember the names of writers. James Roberts. What a
Yes.
legend.
So yeah, we are going to have both those guys on chatting about their experience growing up with Transformers and turning pro themselves. So that will be an amazing chat. Look forward to that.
I think it really will. I mean, what those guys did who kind of picked up the mantle and ran with it. I mean, Nick's artwork, I think, is amazing. But I think what James did with Transformers, like, it needed something different, and he very much took it in a direction that massively spoke to the contemporary audience.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm
Well,
looking
we'll
forward
talk more
to
about
that.
that on episode 50.
Fantastic.
But we'll see you back here next time for episode 49. And it's been great. Thank you for tuning in as always.
Yeah, and hopefully before episode 49 starts recording, we'll actually decide definitively what it is we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, for a change. Right, thanks everyone. And it's goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from me.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to The Rest is Giant Robots. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider subscribing for more and maybe share with like-minded friends. This has been a Wildfur production.